And good evening. This is Glenn Johnson. I'm a Senior Vice President here at Magic Software Enterprises, and I'm joined today by Michael Singer, Director of Technology and Professional Services at Magic Software Enterprises Americas. Welcome, Michael. And welcome to all of you. We're joining a webinar today called Integration That Outperforms, Agile PLM and SharePoint Integration. So we thank you all for being here today and hope that wherever you are in the world listening to this at this particular moment that you will gain valuable education and information from today's session. If at any time you have questions about the content being presented during the session, please enter your questions into the questions and chat box, and we will be happy to answer them at the conclusion of today's formal presentation. Integration is a big topic among enterprise IT departments that are looking to prepare their organizations for all of the future requirements that they may have, particularly on this topic where people are looking to connect product lifecycle management systems with content management and portal solutions like SharePoint. SharePoint, of course, is the powerful, popular system that many of you have inside your organization already for managing enterprise content, for displaying information in portal applications, for organizing that information, and for orchestrating workflow. And Agile PLM, of course, is Oracle's product lifecycle management solution that allows an organization with a complex and growing product portfolio to manage the entire life cycle, meaning from concept and market phase activities all the way through design, conceptualization, development, manufacturing, tooling, and even the discontinuation cycles of products. So we will look at all of that in today's session and how these two systems can work together, along with, of course, sort of the 500-pound gorilla in the room, which would be your ERP system in your organization, whatever enterprise resource planning solution you may be running to control finance, to control things like demand forecasting and so on. And this will typically be either SAP or an Oracle product such as J.D. Edwards or PeopleSoft or eBusiness Suite, or one of the other many solutions, including, of course, Microsoft Dynamics, ERP solutions, NAV, and Great Plains, and AX, and so on. So all of these solutions are possible ERP systems that could be in the mix here when we're talking about integration between Agile PLM and SharePoint. So it's usually going to be at a minimum this three-system collaboration of integration, and so we'll be looking at all dimensions of that in today's session. What we really wanted to do as we begin is just provide a brief background about Magic Software, and then we'll go directly into today's material. Magic Software, of course, is a company that is empowering customers around the globe with smart technology that delivers a multi-channel user experience for enterprise processes and your business logic and data. By multi-channel, of course, we're talking about not only cross-platform, Android, BlackBerry, iOS, and so on in terms of mobile platforms. Also enterprise operating system platforms, Windows, Linux, Unix, and so on. But we're also talking about multi-channel experiences in terms of those mobile devices, those client-server interactions, those web applications, and so on. So multiple client and server environments that are all part of that experience for business logic and data to be transacted. That's what Magic Software is really all about. We're a global provider of application development and business integration platforms. We have more than 30 years of proven experience. We've been offering innovative technology for application platforms and integration platforms, and we bring a focus on business needs based on those relationships with thousands of partners worldwide and customers that support millions of users. Magic Software, of course, has been around since 1983, so we're traded now on the NASDAQ Stock Exchange for many, many years. So all of our financial information is available online. We have solid results, and we're proud of that. We encourage you to take a look at that. We take an approach which is designed to bring all of the work that you've done in your IT department in the past forward, so that we consider that a future-proof approach with the ability to forward migrate things that you develop in terms of application, to be able to take advantage of the integration work that you've done. We enjoy working with customers and business partners around the globe in a very collaborative way, a way that allows you to set the right mix of services from your software vendor, your business partner, and your own IT team. And we deliver solutions that are highly scalable, reliable, delivering always-on mobile solutions, integration that is highly scalable. And all of this is, I think, a reflection of that determination that we have to achieve success. We have some 1,300 plus employees worldwide now, and lots of business partners, customers, and millions of users. So Magic Software has been recognized as a visionary and top performer by leading analyst organizations, and in part because we take a very serious approach not only to development of quality software solutions, but also of customer support through training in our Magic University program. We offer, of course, 24/7 technical support solutions based on our online support system for logging and receiving responses to support issues. And these are typically software issues, so the best way to do that is in writing and documenting file attachments and so on. So we have a full system for doing that, as well as telephone support, of course, that's available to you as well. And then providing global services through a professional services organization that, as we said, has literally thousands of years of experience. If you combine the entire team across all the nations around the world. So this is a company that I think is delivering and bringing the kinds of solutions that you're looking for. So that's who's speaking with you today, who's sharing the information. And now what we'd like to do is get right into our topic, which is, of course, how can you connect SharePoint with all of its users to Agile and all of its users? And there may be some overlap. Some people may be using both SharePoint and Agile. Some may only have access to your Agile PLM system, but in many organizations, all or nearly all of your employees have access to SharePoint. So as you look at that, then how does that integrate with other systems in your environment as well? Obviously, your ERP system being the most important, that is most likely an Oracle application. It may also be SAP or some other third-party software solution. And so we certainly encourage you to consider everything in your IT environment and how to integrate it as we're speaking through and showing the demonstration of our solution to you today. Let's talk about Agile PLM and what is really going on here with your business processes as they relate to product lifecycle management. And we'll look at each of these phases or areas of the product lifecycle as it relates to what's going on. First of all, in the conceptualization phase, you're using Agile PLM to ask questions about who are our customers, how do customers rate our products, where are our products currently in their life cycle, how are we different from the competition, where does innovation come from. This is when you're really blue skying, when you're thinking about what can we possibly create related to products that the market is going to use, accept, and enjoy. Now, the next phase, of course, is where many people begin really formally thinking about this in the design and develop phase, describing the products, defining the requirements, and beginning the development phase from particularly a research standpoint, but also then moving into prototyping and piloting, where you're testing, you're analyzing, you're validating some of the trial product solutions that you have coming forward. And then you move into a launch and ramp phase where the time to market and time to volume issues become of critical concern, moving then into a production phase where manufacturing, making, building, procuring, producing, selling, and delivering your solutions becomes important. And then finally a service and support phase where you're configuring the solutions that you're delivering, you're focusing on quality control issues, perhaps field service maintenance, obviously training for both internal and external audiences, technical support, delivering support to your customers is going to involve you in service level agreements in many organizations, perhaps handling return materials authorization, repair and replace decisions and processes, and of course the overall concept of customer care in your organization. And then finally in the phase out and disposal realm, you look at how you retire, perhaps even recycle not only phased out products, but also the manufacturing lines and so forth that may be involved in creating them. So product lifecycle management, when it looks at the full product lifecycle, generates a lot of information, and it deals with a lot of information. And SharePoint, of course, is an ideal environment for dealing with all of the documents and content that an enterprise creates. And so many of them are already in SharePoint or will need to be placed in SharePoint so that they can be shared and accessed by people across the organization, perhaps outside of the traditional realm of product management and the users of a product lifecycle management system. So enterprise systems are going to have a natural tendency to overlap the Agile PLM functionality. As you look at the enterprise software systems that are out there, your ERP, your CRM, supply chain management, content management systems like SharePoint, portal systems, human resource management systems, your MRP systems, e-commerce platforms, and so on. These are all systems that deal with products, that deal with information about products in your organization, that deal with the master item data. And they may not be the system of record, but they're certainly a key system. And decisions have to be made about which systems are the system of record and so on. And in many organizations, product lifecycle management systems are dealing not only with the traditional notion of products that are considered as widgets, if you will, but also with services related to our products and the work around products. And so work order management becomes a very key question in the business processes and the interaction between the creation of products. Not all manufacturing is assembly line manufacturing. Many manufacturing processes are custom, and so engineering change orders become a critical document and a critical part of the business process, and they have very relevant financial implications for ERP systems. They are very involved in sales processes, which is going to typically relate to your CRM systems. And so all of this needs to be looked at. How do these systems overlap, and where does information need to be exchanged in real time and in long-running business processes where there's human interaction or workflow, which is pacing the exchange of that information between the systems and the overall flow of the business process from one enterprise software system to another. All critical things that need to be analyzed by your business analyst and looked at for areas of improvement. So as we look at those key product lifecycle management areas and how they overlap with these systems, let's think about where some of those processes may best be identified. So what's the overlap between Agile PLM and your ERP system? Well, certainly new items need to be available in both systems. Change orders need to be tracked in both systems. Inventory on hand information is vital information in both a PLM and an ERP system. As we look at CRM, customer service information, master item database information, pipeline and forecast information are all relevant examples where the data and information between the product lifecycle system and CRM will be involved. And it's not just a matter of master item data, but it's also a matter of the business processes around these areas as well. So in terms of HR systems, staff procurement, resource allocation, workforce products, as we said, not all products are certainly considered to be, widgets. Then you need to really look at how that is related to your HR systems. Supply chain management. You may have engineering change order synchronization bidirectionally that needs to flow between an SCM and a Agile PLM system. Bill of material synchronization would be another key area to look at. With MRP, also bill of material, of course, inventory control and basic scheduling operations may need to be looked at. And with your e-commerce platform, of course, your master item database is again involved, and you may need Web 2.0 style product feedback loops, social media product feedback loops that will influence product management information related to those products. This is a very hot and interesting area for a lot of companies that are using Agile PLM, and sometimes the best way to capture that content and store it is going to be in a SharePoint application, which is also social aware and quite capable of storing and retrieving social information and categorizing it and placing it in these nice product-related buckets that you may need to access it in the future. Certainly, Facebook isn't going to neatly organize all of the negative comments about your products and put them into, thank goodness, into the areas that you, where you can easily access them in the future. So if you want to archive these kinds of things and keep them where they're accessible, you're going to want systems on the enterprise side where that can be recorded. And your SharePoint application may be a nice, handy way of doing that, and synchronizing it back in for your product lifecycle management users could be key. So with SharePoint in particular, we're looking at extending human and document workflow processes. So for the non-Agile user, they're going to want to be able to do things like search and browse items and the bill of material. They're going to want to be able to collaborate with team members, request change orders, and manage documents between systems. The PLM user is going to be looking for things like a simplified dashboard with PLM data and browsing capability. And product management themselves are going to be wanting to do things like monitor product performance better and do perform analyses on demand, all of which is possible through a SharePoint application that is designed specifically to interact with back-end Agile PLM information, but also other enterprise information. We're fortunate at Magic to have, a great relationship with Microsoft. As Jared Spataro, the Director of SharePoint Product Marketing at Microsoft, looked at SharePoint, and its need for integration, he really mentioned Magic XPI. This was quoted in all the publications you see listed below here, and many others that we didn't list here. But he's saying that solutions like Magic XPI will enable customers of all sizes to create SharePoint applications that access legacy business applications. And so that's a nice kind of relationship boost there for Magic with this particular solution. So as we look at Magic XPI for business critical SharePoint, we see that PLM, CRM, ERP, and other systems are in need of sharing information. Some users have access, some do not, and Microsoft SharePoint can be a solution for bringing these solutions together to users all across your organization users outside your organization, connecting people, systems, and processes together with workflow solutions that relate to manufacturing, sales, inventory, accounting, and payroll processes across your organization, leading to greater adoption, higher productivity, and ultimately return on investment in your organization. So Magic XPI for Business Critical SharePoint allows you to use SharePoint, and we are a Business Critical SharePoint partner with Microsoft so that you can connect your back-end systems with your SharePoint applications, and this includes, of course, Agile PLM. So as we look at some of the trends that are impacting and affecting IT organizations today, it causes us to look at the problem of siloed data. Now, with siloed data, there are a number of organizational pain points that can occur. You have business critical data that are stuck in the back-end systems, frustrates users, frustrates IT because users are asking for that information and they're not able to see it. You have disconnected teams, groups, workers who are resorting to ad hoc, inefficient, and unreliable processes. A lot of spreadsheets get, traded around and are not well maintained and updated or accessible themselves. So it becomes very ad hoc, lots of email and so on. And then as a result, you get decisions that are based on inaccurate data, and the result is a lost competitive advantage. So the majority of organizations, business users, typically do not have direct access to important business data in a system like Agile PLM. And a small percentage of the organization is licensed or can access that business data directly. So the certain line of business experts, certain IT pros have control and access for either as a user or an administrator to these systems, but the larger organization often sits without access to that important and vitally needed information. So in order to enable business-critical SharePoint solutions, you need to connect SharePoint and those line of business applications. So you can do that with the Magic XPI integration platform. It allows you to surface business data, which is going to increase access to that data by connecting those back-end systems to SharePoint, improve the processes that are taking place between them. It's not just about data, but it's about the steps in a business process so that you can implement, extend, and improve those business processes by incorporating SharePoint workflows and SharePoint information, and really get to an ROI very quickly across your organization. So solutions across the organization are responding to those needs that you might have. And we do that, as I said, with Magic XPI's integration platform. From an architectural standpoint, the platform is built on a highly scalable in-memory data grid that allows you to deploy on-premise or in the cloud with a shared nothing architecture. You have in-memory computing techniques that provide high availability, real-time synchronization, maintaining context, scalability, and security for all of your business processes. From a logic standpoint, you're able to orchestrate business processes, transform all of the data between systems, route messages, transact, and of course, at the same time you're doing all the things, be able to manage those processes and monitor them so that you can see what's going on behind-the-scenes systems that are operating. In addition, you do that with a very rich library of both protocol and enterprise adapters in Magic XPI that allow you to connect to all of the various messaging queues and communication protocols and operating systems and languages that are in the background, but also connect directly to major enterprise applications utilizing their approved APIs. And so you have really what becomes an API workshop running on a very solid platform with very extensive business process capabilities in order to solve the business analyst's challenges in an organization, so that you as the business analyst in the IT organization can come in and start to quickly design and architect a solution to the interaction problems and the lack of connectivity that you're experiencing between IT systems today. So having that kind of platform and tool available to you in a single Magic XPI integration platform environment is very powerful, very revealing in terms of what can now be done across SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, Microsoft, Google, IBM, Lotus, on and on and on. All of these environments now are systematically made available to you in a user interface and dialog box, as opposed to having to work with them in a programmatic line-by-line coding fashion. So what you do is you're really streamlining business processes. You're achieving with Magic XPI a transparency between all of the applications and databases and platforms in your environment, giving you the ability to monitor and control business processes on all three levels: the data, the logic, the information that needs to be available to you, and to conduct business process orchestration in a real-time and asynchronous manner. The result is that you have the kinds of business user experiences and customer experiences that people are asking for. The smooth running business processes, which are reducing operational costs, improving revenue performance, reducing business risk at the same time. And as I said, all this is done without programming it. We have a code-free, metadata-driven integration studio, which you'll see in a moment, user-friendly tools, and all built on this in-memory data grid, which provides you with the high availability and elastic scalability that you need for enterprise-class solutions. So what do you get with the Magic XPI integration platform? The Magic XPI Studio features very prominently its flow editor, which is the nuts and bolts of how business processes are controlled. This is a visual environment that includes a data mapper. There's also very powerful controls for checking and debugging the business processes that you create. At a higher level, you can very quickly lay out the topology of your business process environment, so that you are basically creating naming conventions for those business process flows that you're creating in the flow editor. And you even have a tool for communicating with your business users, a business process editor that allows you to create a higher level view, which is not so focused about the step-by-step parametric business logic that's a part of those visual flows, but rather the user-level view of what's taking place in a business process that transcends multiple business systems that are running in the background. Now, when you run all of that, you run it on that server that we have indicated over there on the right side, the Magic XPI server. It has the in-memory data grid. It's very powerful. It's very fast. But there's no user interface that you have to interact with. Your users continue to use Agile PLM. They continue to use SharePoint. They continue to use what other enterprise systems you have for ERP and SCM and so on. And they all are working better because everything is smoothly integrated and flows and triggers are reacting to one another as you would want them to. So the server itself isn't seen, but the way you can see what's happening in that server is through the Magic XPI monitor, which gives you complete logging of all of that activity so that you have an XML metadata trail with attachments of the logic as you indicate that you want that log to be created. So you can have the information logged that is important to the business process. That's available to you not only for the development phase or for monitoring any conditions that could come up during runtime, but also perhaps as an audit tool, so that if at some point someone needs to go back and say what actually happened here, you have that information recorded in your log. You also have a dashboard view, which just allows you to look at what's going on in your integration server environment and say, what kind of latency are we having? How quickly are these business processes executing? How many of the processes transacted in the last hour, 24 hours, week, whatever it might be? What kind of error conditions were occurring? How many? errors were there, where there might have been lack of internet connectivity, or a system was down or something like that. What are the numbers on that? So that dashboard gives you that sort of overall view of what's going on with these integration processes in the background. Very powerful stuff, and very neatly packaged together in one solution, so that you have a single consistent user interface across both the monitoring and the studio environment, rather than multiple and overlapping middleware tools that you might otherwise have to resort to. With the Magic XPI integration platform, we have a sister solution in Magic XPA, which is giving us access to client-side mobile apps, and so you can actually integrate through Magic XPI to any of your Magic XPA mobile clients, so that you can run mobile apps that you design integrated to those same back-end systems, to Agile PLM, to SharePoint, to your ERP system, and so on. Very powerful stuff. And as we said, all based on this in-memory data grid. We refer to it as a high-end shared nothing architecture with sub-second failover and extreme redundancy and scalability. Now, what that includes is write-back, which is the ability to essentially record the information to the SQL database after the fact, because you're actually doing it in memory at extremely high speeds, and because of the reliability and redundancy of that information, the writing is taking place behind the scenes to the SQL database just as a matter of archive. It's almost like SQL has become the tape backup environment of what's going on in the business process. There's dynamic scaling which takes place, which means that as resources are needed, they become available to this virtual environment, which is powering your integration processes, and you have essentially then co-location of processing and memory spaces, meaning that you have memory and processing power dedicated in a variety of spaces, and you can have as many of those as you need running across as many physical and virtual machines as required. And so the availability of all of that processing power creates scaling of the messaging layer, which is quite impressive because there's no bottleneck. There's no single point of failure. It's almost like self-healing in the sense of its ability to remain constantly available to you, because there's no one spot where the whole in-memory system resides and becomes a single point of failure. So for additional information, we're obviously going to do the demo now, but I wanted to just highlight that you can reach us at info@magicsoftware.com or call us at 949-250-1718 extension 259 if you have any questions to follow up today's webinar. Our website, of course, is www.magicsoftware.com. And so what I'm going to do now is hand things over to Michael so that he can share his desktop. So Michael Singer is, as I said, the Director of Technology and Professional Services for Magic Software, and he is going to share his desktop with us now. I see it, and so I'm going to say thank you, Michael, and we're looking forward to your demonstration today.
Thank you, Glenn. Great presentation. What we're going to see today is we'll see how integration feels or what it looks like. And really, just like Glenn said, integration at its best is when you don't really see that it's there, it's running in the background and integrating the different systems. On our screen, we'll create a new contact in our online SharePoint environment, and we're going to see how that contact is created on other systems like JD AdWords in the background. Once we go through the technical presentation, we'll actually dive into the studio and see how this kind of integration is developed, talk about some concepts when we're developing these types of integration, and in the end, we'll see how to monitor it, and obviously we'll take a few questions before we're done. So let's jump straight into it. We're looking at our SharePoint session, and I'm going to create a new contact in my SharePoint. Let's create Glenn. So last name Johnson, first name Glenn, full name Glenn Johnson. Hope I spelled it right, Glenn. And we'll enter the email, glenn@magic.com. I don't have to go for everything. The company is Magic Software. Title is Vice President of Marketing. Business phone is 949-250-718, and then home phone, whatever. And mobile number. Try to get quickly through it. Fax number, address. And really, I'm just working inside my SharePoint environment. And I'm really not caring about other environments. And US and webpage magic.com. And I think this is enough. I'm going to save.
It's actually magicsoftware.com.
I know. Magic Software is long. So we created Glenn here, and you can see all the other contacts are processed, and Glenn is not processed yet. And what happens in the background now is actually we have a Magic server that's running in the background and picking up the new contact that we created in SharePoint and dispersing that information into other systems. In our case, we're going to upload that into JD and Salesforce. We can also upload it to SAP. We can also upload it to Agile and so on. Now, let's open JD in the meantime because that takes a moment to load. So we're going to sign in into JD. And we're also going to refresh our screen here in the meantime and see that the integration was successful. And we also have the reference of the contact in JD Edwards, which is 77649. So let's jump back into our JD Edwards session, go into our address book, and look for a contact, address number 77649. Click Find. We'll find Glenn. Click Select, and we can see all the details that we've entered for Glenn. So this is the idea of having two systems that are integrated. I work in one system, I work in the other system. One person uses JD Edwards, another person uses SharePoint. Both systems are fully integrated, and data that I enter in one system appears magically in the other system without us having to push any buttons. So how do we create integrations like this, and what does it look like? I'm going to start with looking at the Magic XPI Studio. This is where we develop our integrations. And the Magic XPI Studio has three parts to it. It has the navigation, the components, and the flows. The navigation is broken down by business flows. We have different business flows here for SharePoint, for Salesforce, and so on. A business process is basically a place where I document the project that I'm doing. Okay, I have these icons on the left, which is I can drag, drop, and configure. I can go to properties and change the different names and so on. And what I use the business process for, like I said, is more for documentation. It doesn't really do anything, but it's nice to have the documentation part of our project. Now, where we actually do everything is within the flows. As you can see, the development is a fully visual process. I don't have to actually code anything. And we build flows by simply dragging and dropping components from our list of components into the flow. Let's create a new flow, okay? And let's start playing with the components. The first thing I do when I work on a flow is define my trigger. I can drag components into the trigger, I can drag components into the flow, and based on where I drag them into, I get different options for those components. For example, I want to trigger on Agile when a new item is created or something like that. I just drag the Agile component into my trigger. I go to configuration, I select what I want to trigger on, and now I have Agile configured as a trigger for my flow. I want to have more components that could trigger a flow. For example, sometimes I want to just read XML files from a folder. I can take a component like the directory scanner, again, drag it into the trigger, go to configuration, and here define that I'm monitoring a local area network, monitoring a folder like my CTEMP, for example, looking for CSV files or maybe XML files. And when a file comes in, I want to delete it or rename it or move it to a different folder. I can also load it into a variable. And by configuring all these, by configuring my component, this is how I develop with Magic. I don't really code anything. I just drag, drop, and configure. So I'm going to hit OK. And now I see that I have two triggers for my flow. Inside my flow, the way I develop, again, is by dragging and dropping the components. Let's say first I want to validate the data that came in. I just drag the validate component, configure it, and put it in the flow. Let's say I want to, if the data was right, I want to maybe map it, or if the data was wrong, I want to send an email. In this case, I drag both components on top of the first one, which creates a fork. Let's say that after I send the email, I want to, after I did the data mapper, after I map the information, I want to actually then send an email. So now I create a go-to. So what I'm trying to show here is we can create very intricate logic. Even though the development, as you see, is completely visual, I just drag, drop, and configure. I can create extremely intricate logic with other flows, and using multiple components, I can create interesting workflows that contain approval processes and emails, and I can work with all these systems like JD Edwards, SharePoint, and all the other systems that we work with, SAP, Salesforce, Agile, Exchange, Notes, and so on. Let's take a look at how we integrated specifically into SharePoint and into JD Edwards. When I want to integrate into SharePoint, the only thing I need to do is use the SharePoint component, drag it, drop it into my flow, and configure it. What happens when I select the SharePoint component, I select whether I want to connect to lists or libraries. And when I hit Entity, in the background, Magic goes to my SharePoint server, and it brings in a list of all the lists it found on that server. What that allows me is to have a completely dynamic integration between SharePoint and Magic. And that means that I don't have to connect only to a preset list of components, but I can actually connect to dynamic lists of components. So if I go to the actual SharePoint component that we used, and I go to my configuration, I can see that I connected to my Magic contacts. And if I go to the mapping, I see that I simply selected a specific record. I'm simply selecting all the records that were not processed and loading them into my mapper. Now I could also map into these, or I could add attachments and so on. So this is on the SharePoint side. On the JD Edwards side, the process is very similar. If I want to connect to a JD Edwards server, I'm going to go to my JD Edwards component. I'm going to drag it, drop it into the flow, and click Configuration. I'm going to connect to my JD Edwards server. In this case, I'm going to bring a list of all the business functions that my JD Edwards server exposes. When we connect to JD Edwards, we can connect through a few different options. We can connect through Z-tables by simply writing to the database. We can simply write directly to the Oracle or any underlying database, MS SQL or DB2 400. We don't recommend, it's okay when we're querying the data to connect directly to the database, but when we try and push records into JD Edwards, our best practice is to use business functions, simply because a business function will expose fields and will allow me to map data into that business function, and then will take care on its own of all the things I need to do. For example, if I want to do a sales order and I want to edit a sales order, I'm going to select that. What will happen now is Magic will go to the server and bring in all the fields that that business function exposes. So when I click Map, I can now simply map into all these fields. Now, before I open the mapper, you probably saw this part of my configuration where I define my source. I can have one source. A source can be a database, flat file, XML, and so on, variables. I can have multiple sources. So I can have data that comes from multiple systems, SharePoint, SAP, Salesforce, just XML files that come from a folder, and I can map all the data into any other system. And again, my destinations can also be multiple. So let's take a look at the configured JD component, basically the mapper that we actually used in our flow. If I go directly to the mapping, I'm going to see my source, which is the list that came in from SharePoint. And on my destination is actually the address book business function. And when I go to the mapping, I can see some interesting things. I can map multiple fields into one field. I can add functions which allow me to basically manipulate data on the fly. So if I go to this one and I go to properties, here my calculated value says nothing. But let's say I wanted to clean out all the spaces that came in the email field. I could do something like trim, select my source, which is email. So let's say trim of email, sorry, and hit verify to make sure that I didn't make any mistakes, and it will tell me that my expression is valid. I can actually stand on the function if I'm not sure how it's working and look at the syntax, the parameters it gets, what it returns, and some similar functions as well. If I'm not sure what function I need to list, I just need to open my list of functions and select a different function, and then again stand on it and hit help. Now, once my function is defined, I hit OK and OK, and I'm going to see that I have a function on the mapper. Especially when I map data into JD, I want to manipulate simple things like dates. JD receives Julian dates. Other systems don't work with that type of format. So I want to manipulate the data on the mapper. I don't need to do an extra step for those kind of capabilities. I want to put a condition on the step. This is what you see up here, which says actually map this record in the source to this record in the destination if whatever reason is correct. The field ID is equal to the field ID. And this allows me to map multiple sources to multiple destinations. As you can see here, if I take a look at the flow that we've created, I have a scheduler, which means that this flow is triggered every 20 seconds. I can, of course, change this to 1 second. Like I showed before, I can have multiple triggers. When the flow is triggered, I'm locking that flow I'm going into SharePoint, bringing the record, and then I'm using a component called the data mapper, which is very similar to all the other components. Instead of having a pre-configured mapping, I simply select my source and my destination. My destination in this case is a different flow. Like I said, I can have multiple destinations. I can also map into a database, a flat file, an XML. I can even map into a template, which is basically a dynamic HTML page, which allows me to create dynamic emails and allows me to create maybe a web page that sits, basically expose Magic XPI as a web server and other interesting things that I can do with dynamic HTML pages. So once I do my call flow, which is basically calling a separate flow, I'm going to call this flow, the flow that adds to JD Edwards V1 and Salesforce. Like I did before, I'm going to validate that my lock is on. Then I'm going to map into JD Edwards, and I'm going to map into Salesforce. And once I'm done, I'm going to unlock, or if I had an error, I'm going to go to the other side of the branch and send myself a message in my business activity monitor. This brings me to the last part of our demonstration. How do I monitor? How do I know what's going on? Like we saw before, the integration happens in the background. It's a server side. The Magic server sits in the background, listens to SharePoint, goes and writes into JD Edwards and Salesforce. But what happens if there's an error? How do I administrate processes like this? I can't see anything. It doesn't actually have a UI. What I use is the business activity monitor, the Magic XPI monitor. This allows me, here I see all the projects that are installed on this server. This is obviously our demo server, so it has a lot of projects. Currently we're running this project. I can open it. And within the server, within the business activity monitor, I'm going to see every step that happened in our project. Okay, and I can see all the information that was passing back and forth between the different systems. I see here all the processes that are running, but if I want to only take a look at this flow, the SharePoint, the flow that we actually ran, or if I only want to see where I added information from E1 to Salesforce, I can actually, in my monitor, see the data that was passing back and forth. If you see this little attachment sign, that means that there's a file attached to this step in the flow. So if I double-click this file, I can actually see the XML that was sent into JD Edwards. Okay, and I can see this is the address book master, data row, and the different fields and values that were sent. I can actually debug this and see if there's any problem. If there would be errors, I would obviously see them here. I can filter my information by selecting filters and see only specific types of messages. I can see the flow and all the data that's in it. I can see the different services running on my server. And last but not least, which is the last thing I'm going to show you, the Gigaspaces monitor. Magic runs all its flows in an in-memory data grid, which means I can deploy my project on one server. I can deploy it on multiple servers. And this monitor allows me to see the different servers that are up and running and the different projects that are running on those servers. With deploying a project on multiple servers, I can obviously have redundancy. I can have failover processes, and I can have all these nice things, everything built into Magic and part of the package when you install Magic. This, I think, concludes what I wanted to show today. I think this is a perfect time. It's 5 minutes. We still have 5 more minutes on our clock. So I think this is the perfect time to take some questions. Glenn?
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Michael. And we actually have had some questions coming in, and we'll invite you to type your questions into the chat box and into the questions box, either one. First up is, do you need the Oracle PIP for Agile to JDE integration?
That's a great question. The Oracle PIP is difficult to configure and requires a lot of work. We do not need the Oracle PIP for Agile integration. We, on Agile, can work with the XML files that are created, that are exported from Agile. So the answer is no, I do not need the Oracle PIP for integration, not to Agile, not to EBS, not to JD.
Okay, thank you, Michael. And what SharePoint versions are required?
We support all SharePoint versions. We license them as they come out. We officially support SharePoint Online, 2007, 2013. Whenever a new version comes out, we run it through a certification process and make sure that nothing breaks. Our components are also backward compatible, so we obviously support also SharePoint 2007 and older versions. To date, every SharePoint version that's out there is supported.
What scheduling options do you have in the scheduler service?
That's a great question. Let's take a look. So the scheduler service is very simple to configure. We just take the scheduler service and put it in the trigger line. We can trigger based on interval. Every day, hour, minute, seconds, we can say we want to trigger daily at 12. We can say we want to trigger weekly on Sundays and Thursdays. We can trigger something monthly, once a month at the end of the month, and so on. So the scheduler is pretty robust, gives me any scheduling capability that I can imagine. I can even create, once I define a schedule, let's say I want to trigger every 2 days, and I can also have multiple schedules. So this is the first one, but I can have more than one.
Okay, thanks. And then let's see another one. How does it work with SharePoint workflows?
SharePoint workflows can call Magic, or Magic can call them. So we can definitely work with SharePoint workflows as part of our logic. You can create workflows in Magic. As you can see the logic here, we can send emails. We can use the email component as a trigger also. So someone can send an email, and we would listen to that address. And once an email is received, it's going to trigger a flow. So, you know, when a new record is created in SharePoint, let's say someone gets an email, approves it, then someone, it creates something else in SharePoint, someone goes into SharePoint, we trigger based on that, and so on. However, we can also work with the workflow capabilities within SharePoint. We can expose Magic as a web service, as an HTTP, providing a REST API, or even as a DLL or COM object. Or we can use SharePoint web services and call SharePoint and so on from within Magic.
Very good, Michael. That looks like all the questions. I want to thank you very much for your demonstration, and thanks to all of you for joining us. If you have further questions, please feel free to contact us at Magic Software. Here in the U.S., you can reach us at 949-250-1718 or send an email to info@magicsoftware.com. For the location of an office in a country near you, please go to the Magic website at www.magicsoftware.com, and you can look up the worldwide office location. Thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on another Magic Software webinar.